Another move to compel Congress to finally pass a law against political dynasties. Groups led by the Sambayan Coalition filed a petition asking the Supreme Court to direct the Senate and House of Representatives to enact an anti-dynasty measure. The petitioners noted that there have been over 30 bills filed in Congress to stop the practice, but none have come close to passage. It's not clear how the High Tribunal will handle the new plea. Back in 2013, it already denied a similar petition filed by the group of the late Vice President Jovisto Gingona. The SC invoked separation of powers between the judiciary and legislative branches of government. What are the chances of the new petition this time around? Let's ask Isambayan lead convener, former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Welcome, Justice, to the big story. How hopeful are you after two petitions have already been dismissed by the Supreme Court? What's different this time?
Good morning, ladies. Good morning to our viewers. There were two petitions before that were dismissed, but today, after about 12, 13 years, circumstances have changed because today, about 80% of the members of Congress belong to political families, and about 50% of LGUs are controlled by political families. And we have witnessed, and this has triggered really our petition, the 2025 budget, where for the first time, the budget for education was not given the highest priority in clear violation of the Constitution. What was given the highest priority was the public works, where the congressman inserted a lot of pork barrel and zero allocation. No allocation was given to PhilHealth. And the vast majority of our poor people rely on PhilHealth, yet Congress did not allocate a single centavo to PhilHealth. And also they reduced the budget of the AFP modernization, which we really need to defend the West Philippine Sea. And what did Congress do with the money that they took out from this from PhilHealth, from DepEd, and from the AFP modernization? They put it into the budget of public works, and they increased their pork barrel. And they also created a new program under the SWD called ACAP, which did not originate from the House, did not originate from the Senate, but just was just invented by the BICAM. So we are really saying that if this continues, this will only get worse. And the culprit of all of this, the root cause of all this problem, is that Congress is controlled by political dynasties, and the political dynasties enact the budget, and they insert the pork barrel in the budget so that they can be elected in the next election. So it's a vicious circle. And the people suffer because infrastructure keeps on getting worse. We are falling behind our neighbors because of corruption in infrastructure. And it's about time really to force the issue that we have to enact now an anti-political dynasty law. Thank you.
You're saying, Justice, that the dire situation the country is in may persuade the High Court to reverse its view about the separation of powers.
Yes, because there is a provision in the Constitution which was not found in the 1935 or 1973 Constitution. The framers strengthened the Supreme Court by giving it what we call the extraordinary certiorari power to correct any grave abuse of discretion by any branch of the government or any agency of the government. Branch of the government refers to the executive department and to the legislative department. So actually, the Supreme Court has the power to correct any grave abuse of discretion. This is an exception to the separation of powers,
Right, right.
precisely because of our experience in martial law, where the executive became abusive in terms of accumulating, acquiring, or usurping the powers of Congress. The executive became Congress. The executive uh, uh, passed down, promulgated decrees, which are laws. So the executive absorbed the powers of Congress. And so the framers of the Constitution gave the Supreme Court this extraordinary certiorari power to correct any grave abuse of discretion by the legislature or the executive. And we are invoking this power of the special power of the Supreme Court.
That's what was interesting. In your petition, you did mention that their inaction is actually already, against the Constitution. Do you think, Justice Carpio, having been in the SC, that there is precedent to think that the highest court would kind of revisit, will abandon their previous decisions in favor of changing times?
Yes, I am hopeful because of the changed circumstances. Before, when the Supreme Court issued its decisions in those two cases, it was not yet very apparent that there was grave abuse of discretion. But today, the grave abuse of discretion is so clear, so patent, so apparent that there is reasonable ground, there is solid ground for the Supreme Court to use its extraordinary certiorari power.
But, for example, it does get through and the Supreme Court does mandate Congress to legislate this. We know during that process, a lot of things get shaken around, things disappear from the original form. How can the Supreme Court, kumbaga, keep them on track and make sure that the provisions that come out are actually worthwhile and valuable and will help us?
Well, if the Congress will enact an anti-dynasty law that is not acceptable to the people, then the people can mount a people's initiative to amend that law, and that is that will be the remedy. The remedy will be the hands of the people, in the hands of the people, through a people's initiative.
But just to add more context to this issue, I wanted to ask, are political dynasties inherently bad for you? Because you have political families arguing that they have done well for their constituents and that this allows the continuity of projects within their district, their city, or their province. How do you respond to that, Justice?
Well, the evidence shows the contrary. In places where the political dynasties are entrenched, these are the provinces or cities that are most backward, the most undeveloped. And the people are kept poor or uneducated so that they will rely on ayuda. So we have to correct this now. The evidence is there. The Ateneo School of Government have gathered the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming.
And Justice, should this law be crafted? I mean, how should it go about? Is it the total ban on political dynasties, families? Because there was one proposal to have to not allow political families to serve at the same time, but to allow them to serve consecutively. Kumbaga, bawal ang sabay-sabay, pero pwede daw po yung magkasunod. Is that allowable
Well, there
for
are
you?
many variations, and there are just too many variations, so I will leave it to Congress to enact what they feel will be an acceptable definition of political dynasty, acceptable to the people. We have an example in the BARM where the regional government passed an anti-political dynasty law where only one, I think it allows only one member of the family to be in the regional government in an elective position, and one also for a local elective post. So there are many variations here, and we will see how the Congress will decide.
Justice Carpio, if we may revisit a decision you had penned in 2013 wherein Atong Paglaom versus the COMELEC, wherein you, ironically, this was a unanimous decision by the High Court, which allowed a broader definition of party lists, which was taken advantage by dynasties. Do you regret? What is
No,
your feeling about this decision
My
you penned?
decision broadened, allowed more members, more party list members, because before that, the decision of the court was very strict, and the entire 20% that the Constitution allows for party list members was never filled up. So my decision allowed it to be filled up because the Constitution itself says that the reserved seats for marginalized sector shall be good only for 3 terms, the first 3 terms. It's there, very specific. The framers were very clear that after 3 terms, the marginalized sector should be able to stand on their own and compete with the regular political parties. And so more than 3 terms have passed, so it was time for us to follow strictly the Constitution. And even before, even within the 3-year period, the entire 20% has never been reserved to the marginalized sector. Only half was reserved to the marginalized sector, but the law that was passed did not reserve it for all.
But
So
Justice,
there was, in fact, it did not comply strictly with the requirement of the Constitution that only 50% of the party list should be reserved to the marginalized sector.
but now you see that
But
this
that my
definition
decision
has
opened
been
up the party list system so that the entire 20% can be filled up. But unfortunately, because of the political dynasties invaded the party list system.
Exactly.
They formed their own party list because there is no anti-political dynasty law.
Okay.
We
pasok
open
din
up
yun.
the party list, but there should have been a concomitant at the same time. The party list, the anti-political dynasty law should have been
the antidote.
enacted pursuant to the Constitution. The Constitution creates this party list, but to protect the party list system, there must be an anti-political dynasty law. And that was never enacted. That's why there's urgency, because the political dynasties have invaded the party list system.
Hostaged. Justice Carpio, may this decision of the Supreme Court, while your petition is still pending, may this be revisited? But can someone petition the High Court about this 2013 decision?
No, because my decision conforms to the Constitution. The Constitution says after 3 terms, it shall be an open party list system. There will be no reserved list, seats for the marginalized sector. But what the remedy there is to pass an anti-political dynasty law so that the political dynasties will not invade the party list system.
And Justice, what's next for your group? Should the Supreme Court dismiss your petition?
Again?
What's next for your group? Justice, kung sakaling ma-dismiss po itong petition nyo ng Supreme Court?
If it will not be granted? Well, if it will not be granted, you can just imagine the political dynasties will become more entrenched. They will increase their pork barrel. There will be the infrastructure system of the Philippines will deteriorate, will fall further behind our neighbors, and the people will just rely on ayuda, but the exchange for that, the price of ayuda, is the continued existence of the political parties. It will be terrible for our society, terrible for our democracy.
Right. If I may just be allowed to switch a topic, the SC also just concluded the oral arguments for the PhilHealth fund transfer. That's the 89.9 billion pesos from last year. What did you make of the entire process, Justice? Just your thoughts.
Well, I am hopeful that the Supreme Court will grant us our petition, and will order the government to return the 60 billion that has been transferred by PhilHealth to the National Treasury. I expect that we will be successful in this petition on PhilHealth.
Okay, so it could be possible, right? The Supreme Court could order the return of the 60 billion that has been transferred, or they could also not. Am I right in understanding that?
Well, the Supreme Court could decide it that way, but if the Supreme Court says that the transfer was unconstitutional, then it follows that the funds should be returned.
Okay.
Justice Carpio, if you may allow us to shift to a third topic in as much as we have you. Well, there are some sectors of the Philippines who are saying that the disclosure by our chief of staff of an impending invasion of Taiwan was alarmist. What is your own view?
Can you repeat that again?
Our chief of staff had given a speech before the Northern Luzon Command disclosing that the troops have to prepare for what he sees as an impending invasion of Taiwan by China. How would you assess the situation?
Well, that is a routine matter because China has announced that it plans to invade Taiwan, reunify Taiwan with the mainland by 2027. So that is a public knowledge, and we have to prepare for that. Why? Because any invasion of Taiwan by China would mean that China will seize the Basi Channel. The Basi Channel is the area, the waterway between Taiwan and Batanes. And many parts of the Basi Channel actually form part of our territorial sea because we have many islands there. So if China will blockade or seize the Basi Channel, they are actually seizing Philippine territorial sea. So we have to be prepared for that because we cannot allow any country to seize our territorial sea.
Well, we thank you so much. A pleasure speaking to you as always, former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio.